It turned out that Du Xiaoyu, the young lady of the Du family, was also here. She was quite surprised when she realized that her fiancé was with Luo Yun. The family members who had been so eager to get rid of the male protagonist instantly tensed up when they found out about his connection with the Luo family. They began to suspect that all their hard work might now go down the drain because of the interference of such powerful people. The first to decide to speak was the aunt, who pretended that she was genuinely glad to see her nephew. She wondered why on earth the guy had walked into their party so late. Linmu briefly explained that he had a class, after which he had rushed here as fast as he could. After the guy's explanation, the woman went straight to greeting the Luo family representative, because she had never thought that the young lady would personally come to their father's 80th birthday party. Luo Yun was a bit embarrassed by this unexpected politeness, and explained that she hadn't come here as a representative of Yahello Corp, but rather as a friend of Linmu's. The aunt, with a warm smile, explained that regardless of the reason, their family was simply delighted by the girl's visit. The protagonist interrupted their amiable conversations and wondered where his grandpa was, because he still hadn't seen him. The woman suspected that after the incident, he had forgotten that his grandfather had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, so the head of the family was no longer able to attend such events. Nevertheless, the guy was still determined to talk to his grandfather, so he left all his relatives and guests, and Luo Yun followed him. One of the brothers inquired if their sister had managed to find out anything from the daughter of the owner of Yahello Corporation. The aunt thought that this Luo family girl was definitely not that simple, so it was currently impossible to find anything related to her. The man then inquired as to what this girl had in common with their nephew, but the sister was clueless, though she was definitely sure that they were not dating. Meanwhile, the protagonist had already entered his grandfather's room and softly announced that he had come home. The head of the family was already too weak, so he needed servants even just to eat. Grandpa's gaze was rather blank, so he just mechanically opened his mouth to be fed. Suddenly, he twitched and grabbed the servant's hand as if he didn't want to eat anymore. Only then did the subordinate see that young Master Lin Mu had entered the room, causing her to be a bit confused. The boy calmly released the servant and explained that he just wanted to talk to his grandfather. The worker understood everything perfectly well, so she quickly headed towards the exit. Lin Mu squatted down in front of his grandfather and immediately wished him a happy birthday, taking the old man's hands. Our hero asked if he remembered his grandson, hoping to rekindle at least a spark of memory in his eyes through sheer will. Grandpa still seemed to remember that his favorite grandchild, Lin Mu, was standing in front of him. At this point in the conversation, Luo Yun intervened and, smilingly, wished Mr. Lin a long life, remarking that he would definitely last longer than the South China Mountains. The main character revealed that it was a friend he had brought to help celebrate his birthday. Grandpa still seemed to be hovering in the clouds, so he didn't say many words and only occasionally nodded back. Smiling, he sharply grabbed his grandson's hand again, but he also remained silent. Lin Mu understood perfectly well what the situation was, so he just continued to watch the old man. At this moment, a servant came into the room and informed the young master that the celebration was about to start and Du Xiaoyu was waiting for him to come down. Our hero was rather surprised when he heard that name, so he hurriedly went to see what was going on and left his grandfather to the worker. He quickly went out into the hall where his so-called bride was waiting for him, who did not seem pleased with his absence. Lin Mu finally found a moment to directly ask the girl what she was doing here. It turns out that Du Xiaoyu's grandfather had asked her to attend the event and present a gift from them. She summoned her assistant, who held up a vase that looked very expensive and briefly introduced the gift from the Du family. It was an authentic flower-painted vase from the period of Chinese Emperor Yongzheng. All the guests immediately noticed this rare treasure and began to marvel that old man Du was indeed an incredible person, because a gift like this was worth at least several tens of millions. Our hero thanked their family for such a generous gesture but refused to accept the vase, because it was too expensive for their family. Du Xiaoyu irritably reminded him that she was still the young man's fiancée, so it was normal for her to give such gifts. The guy thought that Miss Du had also fallen off the balcony, because she now started talking about the engagement in complete seriousness. The girl once again emphasized that the engagement was planned by the heads of their families, so it has not yet been officially dissolved. Now the protagonist realized that he had made a serious mistake. He understood that if only he had broken off the engagement earlier, then Miss Du could have taken it easy and not come to the party. The guests were visibly shocked by such news and immediately started discussing who could have broken off the engagement, suspecting that it was definitely not old man Lin who had Alzheimer's. Then the aunt intervened in this conversation and inquired what was going on here and why the young man wanted to dissolve this union. Our hero explained without any nerves that Miss Du thinks he's too bad for her, which is why she's asked him many times to break off the engagement. Of course, Du Xiaoyu's grandfather didn't want to talk about it either, but that wasn't a problem, because Lin Mu was going to personally talk to him. The girl was quite tense, but replied that it would be as her fiancé wished. At the same time, Luo Yun announced that she had also prepared a gift for his grandfather, hoping that he would like it. The protagonist immediately said that the girl definitely shouldn't have spent any money on it. He carefully picked up the mysterious box, which gave no hint of what was inside. The guests were eagerly watching the young man, because they were eager to see the reaction to what she had prepared for the birthday boy. In the end, Lin Mu still opened the wooden box and saw a ring in front of him that was made of a green gemstone. The guys I was trained on this sort of thing, so he immediately recognized it for what it was. The girl still decided to explain on her own and revealed that it was a ring made from the best jade, called Shuiyang. Du Xiaoyu noted that the stone was pretty good, but in any case, they couldn't be sure that the ring was real. Luo Yun realized that Du Xiaoyu had a keen eye that could determine the quality of the jade so easily. The girl still thought that the ring must be real, because it was unlikely that anyone would dare to deceive the Luo family. Du Xiaoyu decided to finally leave her rival alone and congratulated Grandpa Lin on such an incredible gift. The protagonist, despite the tense situation, smiled and thanked the guests for being so generous. He eventually accepted the gift from Du's family on behalf of his grandfather, but warned that next time he would come to discuss breaking off the engagement and she shouldn't waste any more time on such events. Du Xiaoyu was clearly irritated by the situation, her lips tightly pressed together, and she only nodded briefly in response, showing that she had no intention of continuing this conversation. The aunt finally intervened, who couldn't understand how her nephew could make such decisions on his own. The guy explained that nothing would work out between them even if you do it through force, so it was easier to break the engagement to avoid wasting their nerves and time. Aunt Rong realized that the protagonist was serious, so she backed off and didn't bother to change his mind. After the party, Lin Mu was back in his acquaintance's car and had already driven away from his family's house. The girl decided to talk about how this Du Xiaoyu is quite beautiful, so the guy should think about whether he will regret breaking the engagement. The protagonist didn't see this as a problem because his fiancée doesn't want to waste time on him, so her beauty and intelligence no longer matter. Luo Yun still suggested that he stay with the girl longer to find out her feelings, and maybe then his feelings wouldn't change. But in any case, Lin Mu wasn't burning with the desire to marry her specifically, so he refused. Also, the lad, glancing at his companion, added that he was not the kind of man who would pursue something that did not belong to him, leaving behind what was at his fingertips. The girl laughed and noted that Lin Mu had a boneless tongue since he spoke of such things so easily. It wasn't long before she informed young Master Lin Mu that they had arrived at the right place. Our hero quickly jumped out of the car and started actively typing something into his phone. The next second, there was a ringing notification sound from Luo Yun's phone. Lin Mu handed her his phone number and asked her to call if the girl needed help again. Luo Yun said goodbye to the protagonist with a smile on her face, showing with all her appearance how much she appreciated this meeting and how happy she was about the circumstances. She then quickly drove off in the direction of her home, so the young man didn't even have time to respond. Lin Mu was in no hurry to go inside and began to actively dig through the pocket of his jacket. It turns out his grandfather had handed him a note, telling him not to worry about him because the old man was only pretending to have Alzheimer's, so he wouldn't have to mess around with all the family members fighting over the inheritance. The protagonist did not expect that the head of their family had come up with such a cunning plan for himself. The next day, the guy immediately went to the Du family's resort to solve his main problem. He was met at the entrance to the resort by two guards who were in no particular hurry to let the stranger into their master's territory. The guy explained that he was from the Lin family, asking to be let through so he could talk to Grandpa Du. The guard immediately informed his other colleagues that the young man was alone. Eventually, they allowed our hero to pass and informed him that an elderly master was already waiting for him inside. Smiling, Linmu thanked the guards for the opportunity to talk to their elder. He quickly walked up the steps that led to the Du family's huge resort. There were already quite a few people resting by the pool. Among them was Grandpa Du himself, whom the guy was looking for. The old man, who was lounging on a chaise longue and sunbathing, said hello to the protagonist and wondered why he was looking for him. Linmu was going to state everything briefly, so he immediately asked if the master was close to his granddaughter, Du Xiaoyu. Grandpa immediately tensed up because he thought something had happened to the girl. The young man tried to calm him down, explaining that nothing much was going on and told him directly that she just wasn't very happy with the engagement. Mr. Du accounted that it was quite normal for children to quarrel, so he asked Linmu not to take it all seriously. The protagonist still thought that they were simple people, so if Du Xiaoyu didn't want it, he wasn't going to waste her time anymore. One of the Du family members was displeased with the kid's audacity, since he decided to make such a cocky decision on his own. Grandpa immediately intervened in this conflict and ordered the man to shut up and not speak to Linmu in such a tone. All the guests on the resort immediately fell silent because they did not expect the head of the family to be so tough. In the end, the old man once again questioned whether the boy had really come here specifically to break off the engagement. The protagonist confidently confirmed his intentions and emphasized that after this, he and Du Xiaoyu would become mere strangers. Mr. Du, realizing the futility of further resistance, sighed heavily and finally agreed to dissolve the alliance. The guy thanked him for the opportunity and promised to take all the blame. So he was about to leave so as not to take up any more of the old man's time. He quickly turned around and dryly said goodbye to the entire Du family, who definitely didn't expect this turn of events. No one could understand why the master had let this breakup happen so quietly, and they were afraid that rumors about it would spread quickly. Mr. Du was unhappy that someone was trying to oppose his decision because it definitely didn't concern the ordinary family members, and besides, he would know about all their dealings with the Luo family. The man believed that the Luo family was much stronger than the Lin family, so if Xiaoyu married any of them, it would help their family quite a bit. Mr. Du himself also understood all of this, so when the engagement had already been broken off, there was no point in hiding anything. Meanwhile, the protagonist went downtown. After meeting his former father-in-law in the middle of a busy street, Linmu was lucky enough to meet his teacher, Miss Song. The young man was happy about this coincidence, so he decided to help the teacher carry her bags. The girl rejoiced at this sudden good fortune and was not averse to handing over the burden to her apprentice. Linmu immediately noticed that she was carrying some sort of gift, so he decided to inquire about who was having a birthday. It turned out that Song Liangru herself was having the celebration, so the protagonist thought she was going to celebrate alone. The teacher dismissed his speculation because she wanted to get together with her neighbors, so she invited our hero to the celebration as well. The young man didn't seem to have expected such a suggestion from Miss Song at all, so he was confused and didn't know how to answer. Suddenly, Li Guangyu, who was accompanied by his bodyguards, intervened in their conversation. He couldn't understand how Song Liangru could be so bored on her birthday, so he suggested that she throw a real celebration. The girl calmly replied that there was no need for that because she had already found herself some people to celebrate the day with. Li Guangyu suspected she was talking about her friend Xiao Jie, so he offered to take her along and added that birthdays are very important in Korea. Song Liangru wasn't going to fall for his silly tricks because she was Chinese and she wasn't interested in Korean traditions. At that moment, she turned around and saw that one of the guards had already blocked her way. The girl tensed up when she saw such maneuvers and asked Li Guangyu what it all meant. Her acquaintance only grinned enigmatically, leaving this agitated question unanswered. He had been searching for Song Liangru for a very long time and had put a lot of effort into it, so now he couldn't understand why she wouldn't give him any chance. It was hard for the guy to believe that she was going to choose some weakling over him. The protagonist was outraged that he was also involved in this fight even though it didn't concern him in any way. And Song Liangru herself said that compared to Linmu, Li Guangyu was just trash. The cocky suitor wasn't going to give up anyway, because the only reason he was putting up with all this was because he liked the girl. He asked our hero not to dream of any relationship because it's as if Song Liang-ru will just dump him as soon as she no longer needs him. The girl was unhappy that her acquaintance was behaving so inappropriately and asked him to stop slandering her. The guy didn't see any problem at all with her words because he was sure that she would definitely ditch Lin Mu sooner or later. Song Liang-ru asked her acquaintance to leave amicably, because otherwise she wouldn't let him get away with such a prank. Li Guanyu stood with an arrogant grin because he was sure that the girl definitely couldn't beat him. The girl could not stand it and tried to hit her acquaintance, but he managed to dodge in time. The young man liked that kind of fervor, so he suggested that the beauty try again so he could give her a couple of tips. Now the main character realized that it's not so easy to be a good guy, because he just helped to carry things and in the end he already got into some trouble. One of the bodyguards decided that they didn't need to waste any more time on some weakling and attacked Lin Mu. The protagonist expected such a development, so he carefully watched the movements of his opponent. Eventually, the guy managed to react in time, so he successfully punched his opponent right in the face. Even such an experienced fighter could not resist the strength of our hero, so he fell to the floor without strength. His comrade flew after him as well, whom Lin Mu also neutralized with one precise strike. In the end, the young man remained unharmed, while all his opponents were lying helplessly on the ground. Song Liang-ru didn't expect to see such a turn of events, so she fearfully asked if our hero was fine. The protagonist began to tell with a smile that he saw the two men surround him, but after blinking once, he had already witnessed these fighters lying on the ground. The guy lied that he must have been rescued by some master, but Miss Song had a hard time believing it because she didn't see anyone nearby. In any case, she was happy for Lin Mu being fine, so any details didn't bother her. At this moment, the bald bodyguard tried to stand up and report that the person who beat them up was definitely the young man himself. Our hero did not want to reveal his skills, so with all his might, he stepped on the hand of the defeated opponent so that he did not say too much. Meanwhile, Song Liang-ru asked the guy to hurry up and leave this place because her mood had gotten really bad because of all these people. In turn, Li Guanyu wasn't going to let them go so easily, because Lin Mu dared to injure his men. The girl was sure that his bodyguards were injured through no fault of their own, so she suggested that her acquaintance look for the master who had done all this to them. The guy despised professionals because they only knew how to hide like rats, and wanted to see if he could find someone to save them again. The protagonist felt that the situation was starting to heat up, so he tensely looked at Li Guanyu, who was in no way able to keep up with them. Song Liang-ru sensed this tension and immediately stopped her disciple, because his potential opponent was too dangerous, as he had already won many taekwondo competitions and was quite strong. Meanwhile, Li Guanyu kept trying to hurt our hero, calling him a lowlife who can only hide behind his skirt. The protagonist couldn't afford to stand on the sidelines, because that way he would lose his dignity, so he was going to play a little game with his opponent. He turned to Li Guanyu with confidence in his voice and offered to see what he was capable of. The guy himself was glad that Lin Mu had the courage to accept such a challenge. Lin Mu wanted to get this whole conflict over with quickly and see if his opponent's words matched his real abilities. Li Guanyu didn't wait any longer and accelerated sharply to suddenly attack our hero. He felt that now the protagonist should just beg for mercy, because Lin Mu simply wouldn't be able to resist his incredible strength. Song Liang-ru realized that there was no way she could help her student, so she remained standing back and simply asked him to be careful. The guy could already see that his opponent was not at all like some other weakling. In any case, the protagonist thought that Li Guanyu was hoping in vain if he really thought that this fight would be so easy. But the guy was still absolutely confident in his strength, so he continued to attack Lin Mu, who had managed to dodge so far. Eventually, the protagonist managed to block even a strong leg kick and, incredibly, kept his balance. An interested smirk immediately appeared on Li Guanyu's face, because he simply hadn't expected the young man to even be able to block his turning kick. He paused for a while and wondered aloud what the protagonist was going to do now, as he was definitely not in a particularly favorable situation. Song Liang-ru could clearly see how strong that blow was, so now she wasn't entirely sure if her disciple was fine. Li Guanyu himself was surprised by this outcome, because he could have calmly broken a board with his punches, yet the protagonist somehow managed to withstand it. Meanwhile, Lin Mu replied that he was indeed fine, though he admitted he hadn't even expected his opponent to be this good. The teacher noticed that the young man was holding up quite well, so she asked him when he had managed to become so strong. He simply told her that it was after he was discharged when he truly realized his weakness. Li Guangyu decided to take advantage of the guy being distracted by the conversation and tried to attack him a second time. It seems that the protagonist had long been prepared for this turn of events, so he put his two hands forward. His opponent immediately noticed this maneuver on his part and thought the guy would try to grab his leg. He simply couldn't let Lin Mu do something like this, so a solution to the problem had to be found right here and now. The guy, mid-flight, changed his attacking foot, trying to attack the protagonist from the side, giving him no time to defend. Song Liangru was not too scared, as she believed that Lin Mu had finally met his match. However, the guy actually had a very good reaction, so even in such a desperate situation, he managed to dodge. Eventually, he managed to put his plan into action and successfully grabbed his overconfident opponent's leg. Lin Mu was very angry at this guy, so he decided to teach him a lesson for being so impertinent. He twisted Song Liangru's foot with all his might, and then heard a rather unpleasant crunch. Feeling this unbearable pain, even such a strong fighter shrilly screamed. Lastly, the protagonist advised Li Guangyu not to try to make moves he couldn't do, because it would only make him look like a complete fool. Those were his last words, after which he walked over to Miss Song, and together they walked away from the humiliated weakling. When they were back on the main street, the teacher admitted that she had not expected this turn of events. She marveled that Lin Mu had gotten so strong in just a few months, and our hero simply said it was all just for his health. Song Liangru had been haunted by the feeling that she was talking to a completely different person the entire time, adding that the guy had only gotten better. She immediately remembered that her roommate was also very good at martial arts. The protagonist guessed that Miss Song was talking about Zixi, whom Li Guangyu had mentioned earlier. Then the teacher decided to reveal that her friend has been practicing since she was a child, so she uses the sword as if it were an extension of her arm. The guy realized that she was quite good, so he inquired about what such professionals did, but Song Liangru didn't know any details. In the end, she herself suggested that Lin Mu have tea together, because her neighbor was just at home. The protagonist declined because he still had some business to attend to and wished them a good time. The guy said goodbye and was about to leave, but Song Liangru lastly told him to make sure to stop by next time. Lin Mu was calmly walking through the streets of the city when he suddenly heard the sounds of a chase behind him. It turns out that some brazen thief had dared to steal a bag in broad daylight and was now desperately trying to escape prosecution. The villain wasn't going to give up so easily, so he yelled for everyone to disperse and give him his way. He tried to quickly run across the road, in the middle of which a police car had just stopped. A female law enforcement officer immediately jumped out of the car and attempted to apprehend the man who was so desperately trying to flee the scene of his crime. The thief tried to jump over the fence, but in the end his foot slipped unsuccessfully. As a result, he fell to the ground and dropped with a clatter the very bag he was so eager to steal. The policewoman immediately jumped over the fence so as not to miss the opportunity to capture the villain. She emphasized in a cold, stern voice that any resistance was futile. The thief unhappily clucked his tongue because he realized he had no more avenue of retreat. Eventually, the man pulled a knife from his pocket and began threatening the girl who tried to restrain him. The police officer ordered him to stop resisting because assaulting an officer is a serious offense. The man thought he wasn't a thief until he was caught, so he could do whatever he wanted, but backup was on the way, so it would be hard for him to evade the police. The officer said that if he did surrender voluntarily, she would pretend that the offender had not assaulted her. The girl wasn't going to give up so easily anyway, so the girl could only dream of such a thing. She realized that the situation with this intruder was too complicated, so he was leaving her no other choice. The policewoman was about to apprehend the bandit, but he started waving his knife at her to stop her from approaching. The girl acted quite professionally, so she quickly grabbed the thief by the arm and immobilized him. As she paused and laid the man on the ground, she emphasized that he had a choice. Before that, she asked why the whole situation was made more complicated, because now the violator had earned himself another non-compliance with the law. Suddenly, someone else put his foot down on the policewoman and emphasized that it was better for the woman to stay out of these matters. The police officer then immediately realized that someone had come to the aid of the bandit. She had pretty good physical fitness, so she managed to dodge in time. Now the policewoman understood that it was this gangster organization that had it all together. One of the men said that there are some things you should just turn a blind eye to, so a girl better not seriously look for trouble on her day off. She, as a police officer, was outraged by this sort of thing, because she couldn't just let criminals go. The bandit was annoyed that the girl was so stubborn, so he decided to deal with her. The policewoman was able to dodge the first blow, and then realized something was wrong. She stumbled helplessly against the fence and realized she had nowhere else to dodge. Meanwhile, the bandit had already pulled out a knife and rushed towards the girl to finish her off sooner. At this point, someone stopped the villain and pointed out that everyone makes mistakes, so you should forgive them if possible. It turned out to be the protagonist, who felt that there was no need to resort to sacrifice during a routine robbery. In the end, the bandit agreed with him and decided to forgive the girl this time, emphasizing that she should stay out of other people's business next time. Linmu was glad that he had solved this problem so easily. Staring at the departing bandits, the guy didn't even notice that the police officer had already handcuffed him. The protagonist couldn't understand at all what it was all about, and the girl explained that he needed to fully realize what he had just done. The guy still didn't see the problem either, because all he wanted to do was help a cop who was in trouble. In turn, the girl absolutely refused to believe that Linmu was not familiar with these criminals. The protagonist was annoyed by this attitude towards him, because he really saw these people for the first time. But she still didn't trust him, because the bandits obeyed him so easily. Linmu still didn't understand anything, because he was sure that the bandits had only left because they wouldn't be able to defeat him in a fight. The policewoman was not at all sure that the young man could defeat 3 robbers, so she was still going to take him to the station and write a report to clear up the whole situation. The guy began to realize that the situation was quite serious, so he got nervous, because he still had a considerable amount of important plans left, which were literally destroyed in a second. At that moment, another police car pulled up beside them, from where another officer got out and immediately recognized Officer Wong. The young man realized that she was the one calling for backup and saw that his colleague had managed to handle the perpetrator herself. Then the girl explained that it wasn't the same robber, but there were suspicions that this particular guy might have been an acquaintance of the bandits. The officer agreed to help her and take the perpetrator to the station himself, and Ms. Wong herself was to return to the office. At this point, the policewoman was a little embarrassed, because she still needed help getting into the car as she had managed to twist her ankle during the confrontation. Putting our hero in the car, the guy quickly rushed to help his co-worker. He immediately noted that the girl was rather clumsy. She tried to explain that things had accidentally gotten out of hand. Suddenly, Ms. Wong froze in place because she saw something shocking. It turned out that Linmu had managed to get out of the handcuffs, so he was no longer in the car. Now the police officers began to doubt that the protagonist was an ordinary man. In turn, the guy himself was thinking that he shouldn't have been prying after all when he heard someone call out to him. The protagonist was greatly surprised because he saw that it was Miss Luo, who should have been home a long time ago. The girl explained that she had forgotten to buy some condiments, so she went out to get them and suggested that Linmu take a walk together and then come over to visit with her friend. In the end, he agreed, because it was the best choice for hiding from the police. Pretty soon, they had already gone to the store and returned home, where Zixi was already waiting for them, surprised that they had managed so easily. One of the girls remarked that Song Liang-ru had found such a cool seasoning and asked what the name of this beautiful young man was. Another friend asked Zixi not to be so persistent, because she might scare away such a handsome man. The main character said hello and said with a smile that he was glad to have this meeting. The girls couldn't wait any longer, so they asked their friend to introduce them as soon as possible, before she finally introduced Linmu briefly, calling him her disciple. Zixi guessed that this young man was the teacher's favorite, since she had invited him home. Song Liang-ru then revealed that this guy had helped her teach Li Guangyu a lesson, so she called him over to thank him for such a favor. One of the girls was surprised by this fact, because she still didn't know that Li Guangyu had taken up again. Zixi asked if she could call our hero Amu and said that their acquaintance, although he was a scoundrel, in battle he knew no equal. The protagonist took a seat next to him and noted that his abilities were definitely not comparable to the very girl he had already heard a lot about. Zixi guessed that her friend had already told her about her powers, because otherwise the guy himself hadn't guessed about her powers. She also hinted that an acquaintance of theirs named Mangwan was currently abroad, so they had a spare room in the house. Linmu definitely didn't expect to be asked to move so quickly, but he had already found a place to live, so there was no need for him to do so. The girl still offered to let our hero take the room downstairs and help all the others move things upstairs if needed. Song Liangru agreed with her friends and asked the guy to stay here to live and help each other. Since the girlfriends were so insistent, the protagonist decided to accept their sudden offer. He had been warned right away that the second floor was for girls only, so it was forbidden to enter without permission. Also, the guy should clean up after himself and always wash the dishes if they eat together. Linmu was starting to get tense with so many rules, but Zixi explained that there weren't that many and asked her new neighbor to listen carefully to all the details. Eventually, the girl finished listing all the rules and suggested they finally get to the celebration. Everyone remembered that they had gathered at this place to celebrate Songru's birthday. 2 days later, the guy had already realized that it was pretty difficult with girls, and going shopping already seemed like a hassle. After a while, the protagonist was finally able to pack all the packages into the trunk of his car. At this moment, someone behind his back rejoiced at such an unexpected encounter, so Linmu turned around in surprise. Turns out it was the same policewoman who was already jingling the handcuffs in her hands. The young man noted confusedly that he really hadn't expected to meet the officer at this point. The protagonist found a way to get away from the police officer and pretended that there was something amazing behind her back. The policewoman was very inattentive and fell for such a stupid ploy from Linmu. It turned out that the guy had already disappeared somewhere, so the girl shouted indignantly to the whole street. At the last second, she noticed the protagonist trying to flee the scene on his bike. The policewoman quickly sat down in her squad car and set off in pursuit of Linmu, who was driving quite fast. For her part, Song Liangru couldn't understand where Linmu had disappeared to so suddenly. At that moment, a cute couple was walking down the sidewalk, completely unaware of what was in store for them. A girl was walking with her lover and carelessly telling some life story when someone whizzed by nearby. She couldn't figure out what it was, and then she noticed that her ice cream had gone somewhere. They further witnessed a police car chasing this unknown object at full speed. The guy couldn't understand at all what was going on, because he had never witnessed a bicycle being chased by the police before. Meanwhile, the protagonist was highly annoyed that this female police officer was so stubborn and restless. He also realized that at this rate, the tires on his vehicle wouldn't last long. Linmu realized that he needed to look for alternative ways to retreat and saw an inconspicuous alley nearby that was suitable for this. It turned out that the policewoman was closely following the young man's actions, so she reacted in time and swerved. A smirk immediately appeared on the girl's face because she was sure that the guy would definitely not be able to hide from her. The protagonist did not suspect at all that his plan had failed and calmly walked down the street, rejoicing that he had managed to escape from this mad woman. Within a second, he heard a distinctive click and felt the cold metal of the handcuffs around his wrist. The young man directly admitted that the officer really got to him because she had been chasing him for such a long time. The police officer herself did not see this as a problem because she merely wanted to bring the escaped felon to the station. Our hero was still trying to prove that he hadn't done anything illegal and yelled that there was a robbery going on right behind the officer's back. The girl wasn't going to fall for Linmu's tricks a second time, but he spoke in complete seriousness. She promised that the young man would be a corpse if he fooled her again, but she still believed it because she heard a noise and shouting nearby. The police officer asked the protagonist to wait here while she checked to see what was going on. Obviously, the protagonist was not going to obey the girl, so he immediately tried to get out of the handcuffs. He was about to leave, but heard that the criminal had already taken a hostage. Eventually, the guy got interested in the whole situation because he hadn't yet seen a robber cover himself with hostages. A considerable number of people had already gathered in the shopping center, not knowing what to do in such a situation, and the robber threatened to shoot the defenseless man he managed to grab. As the protagonist got closer, he saw that the robber had captured a policeman, But people in the crowd told him that he used to have a little girl in his hands with whom this brave girl had switched. Lin Mu was surprised because he didn't expect that the officer had such a good heart that she sacrificed herself for the child. The policewoman continued to keep her cool and ordered Lan Zidong to stop because he was already surrounded. The man was not going to give up and ordered everyone to fall back and prepare a car for him, because otherwise his hostage would die. The protagonist began to get annoyed with the whole situation because there was too much noise from this criminal. Suddenly, he just plopped down on the floor right in the middle of the crowd, causing the bandit to immediately look away from voicing his conditions. Lin Mu didn't bother to explain anything and carefully fixed his hair before continuing with his plan. The policewoman was shocked when she saw the guy and asked him to get out of here as soon as possible because it was too dangerous. It turns out that our hero decided to pretend that he had always been a fan of Brother Lan and wanted to give him some sort of gift. At this moment, a woman in the crowd indignantly shouted that Lin Mu had stolen her bag. The young man paid no attention to her and continued to talk about how the bandit was his idol and ever since he was a kid he wanted to be like him. The officer was incredibly angry at the fact that the protagonist was behaving in such a manner, and now she was sure that nothing good could be expected from him. Lin Mu roughly gagged the girl and emphasized that he was now talking to Brother Lan, so she had no right to interfere in the conversation. The man started to get stressed out by our hero's nonsense, so he asked to get him a car and offered to talk when they left the scene. The guy quickly started running errands from the thug and remembered that the policewoman's car was just parked somewhere nearby. Eventually, he took his time going outside and reported that there was a sniper nearby. The criminal was shocked by this information and once again questioned what the protagonist had just said. He finally looked around and saw that the young man had actually lied to him and there were no snipers nearby. Meanwhile, the main character took the opportunity that he had distracted the bandit and threw him his bag. Lan Zidong managed to react to the sudden attack in time and put out his hand, knocking the bag away. He decided to immediately fire his gun, but there was a misfire, so Lin Mu remained unharmed. The guy's reactions were perfect, so he quickly went low and grabbed his opponent's arm. After that, he turned around and gave the bandit a blow to the head from his elbow, so he could no longer stay on his feet. The world around Lan Zidong abruptly spun, and in just a second he was on the ground. Our hero then promptly clobbered the criminal, who now promised to finish him off at the first opportunity. In turn, the policewoman was already too angry, so she declared that she had had enough today and was going to deal with this annoying intruder right here and now. The protagonist turned to her and asked her to give the purse to the lady he had managed to rob because his hands were full for the time being. The girl didn't mind and quickly began to gather up all the things that were scattered around. Lan Zidong, who had already been received by the two police officers, was incredibly angry at being treated in this manner, so he was already thinking of a revenge plan. An hour later, Lin Mu had already returned home to his new roommates, who were completely unaware of what had happened to him. He was met at the doorstep by Song Liang-ru, who immediately asked where the guy had disappeared so suddenly. The protagonist sighed heavily and replied that he just didn't want to talk about it, because he hadn't had much luck lately. The girls still did not calm down, because they were worried about the fate of their friend, while Lin Mu explained that nothing special had happened to him. As he walked further along, the young man noticed that his friends were watching some concert on TV, and they told him that they really wanted to go there, but tickets were very hard to get. At this moment, Zixi noticed that the protagonist had finally returned, wondering if he was going to apologize for his sudden disappearance. Lin Mu was well aware that he had no choice, so he promised to definitely redeem himself. He asked his acquaintances to wait a little while he stepped away to make one important call. The girls were surprised that our hero had just returned and he had some problems again, but the guy promised to tell everything later. Zixi was no longer sure that this young man was an ordinary student because he was acting too mysterious. Song Liang-ru agreed with her friend and noted that he seemed too masculine for his years, but the girl thought that wasn't his only oddity. As it turned out, the guy had already made arrangements for Yao Xinyan's concert and hoped his girlfriends had free time for him in 3 days. Zixi was overjoyed at this news and wondered how he had managed to get tickets. The protagonist didn't give details about Old Man Wang helping him and briefly explained that he had some connections. The next day, the whole company went to an establishment to grab a bite to eat together. Linmu immediately noticed that this place was suspiciously quiet today. In turn, the friends were surprised that their acquaintance also came to the cafeteria today. The girl immediately felt someone else's gaze on her, so she turned sharply towards the company of friends. Suddenly, the protagonist looked closer and felt that there was chi energy lurking in her chest, which literally shocked him. The guy definitely didn't expect to meet another cultivator in a place like this. Zixi thought that he had such an eye for the girl because of her beauty, and the man confirmed it, adding that aside from all that, the stranger was rather calm. The girl didn't seem to like this description of this mysterious beauty, so she stepped on Lin Mu's foot with all her might. The young man did not expect to feel such a sharp pain at all, so he asked fearfully why he deserved such a punishment. Zixi irritably explained that it was as if our hero's eyes were already starting to pop out and asked him to hurry up and get them something to eat. Lin Mu began to guess that this girl had somehow hurt his friend, but she didn't want to say anything. Song Liangru also said that she didn't know anything about the stranger, so our hero was only left to get lost in his speculation. In fact, the teacher thought that the young man had managed to fall in love with her at first sight. Lin Mu then explained that this girl just seemed somehow familiar to him, and there was also some special aura around her. Miss Song was not impressed by all these words at all, so she only sighed unhappily. The protagonist realized that the situation was heating up, so he quickly took out the front row seat tickets for Yao Xinyan's concert tonight from his pocket. The girls quickly grabbed their gift and forgave the young man this time. After all, a smile immediately appeared on Song Liangru's face, and she promised to take all her friends to the concert after class. It wasn't long before they arrived at the venue, where a good number of fans had gathered. The girls didn't expect Lin Mu to get such fancy places for them at all. They all admired Yao Xinyan because it felt like there were only more than 1,000 police officers patrolling the concert here. To Zixi, this fact was obvious, because this singer was a real star. Of the entire crowd, only our hero had no idea whose concert they were attending. At that second, the very girl whose exit everyone had been waiting for appeared on the stage. She greeted all her fans with a smile and said that she was very happy to perform here in Dunhai. At the same time, everyone in the audience was actively supporting their idol and shouting their love for her. The girl went on to say that it was only because of her fans that she was here today and wanted to dedicate the first song to everyone who supports her. She asked everyone to enjoy a song called To the Descendants of True Love. 3 hours later, the concert was still going on, so the singer looked pretty tired already, but the next part of the performance promised to be even more fun. Yao Xinyan announced that she wanted to invite someone from the audience to help with the performance. She asked the organizers to point the spotlight at someone she could call on stage. Of course, Zixi began to actively wave her hands to dedicate the spotlight just to their company. She saw that the light was gradually heading in their direction, and she was already glad that this person was turning out to be it. After a second, Yao Xinyan asked for the spotlight to stop because she saw the right person. In the end, it turned out that this lucky guy was the main character, who definitely did not expect this turn of events. The singer happily greeted her audience and invited the happy fan to run to her stage as soon as possible. Zixi couldn't understand at all why her acquaintance was still sitting in his seat and didn't seem to be in a hurry to go on stage at all. Lin Mu himself didn't understand why he had to go anywhere, and then his friend explained that he had become a lucky man and could now sing with Yao Xinyan. The boy was surprised at this news and still didn't want to go anywhere, because he couldn't sing at all. The girl then warned him that he would just set the artiste up if he didn't go. Lin Mu didn't care about this fact at all, but Zixi also didn't insist and said that the decision was up to the young man himself. Meanwhile, Yao Xinyan turned to the guy in white again and asked why he didn't want to sing with her. The main character explained that he was too shy to go on stage and also couldn't sing, so he wanted such a happy opportunity to go to someone else. Fans immediately started shouting that the guy had said everything beautifully and now wanted their own opportunity to sing with Xinyan. The girl decided to get behind Lin Mu and choose a new viewer for this interactive segment. A second later, the spotlight illuminated another spectator who was delighted that he had been chosen. This guy ran to the stage with all his legs and very soon sang his favorite song and a duet with Yao Xinyan. At the end, they hugged tightly, and the girl thanked her viewer for such strong support. After that, the girl thanked all her fans again, and the hall erupted in wild applause and squeals. That was the end of the concert, so all our heroes left the hall and were happy that everything had gone so cool. At the same time, Zixi was very unhappy that the guy took away her chance to go on stage and make this night finally perfect. Meanwhile, some two guards appeared behind Lin Mu's back and directly addressed him. One of the bodyguards reported that their mistress would like to meet the protagonist. The young man was surprised to hear such a request and wondered who the lady was. The guard didn't hide anything and directly explained that Miss Yao Xinyan had asked for this. Then our hero was even more surprised and wondered the reason for this, but the bodyguards themselves also knew nothing and just followed their mistress's orders.